स्वाध्याय टीवी। डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Namaskar. Welcome again in the series of a lecture regarding the topic of process costing. As we already discussed in the past sessions regarding the practical problems of the process costing one by one. In the initial part of the process costing, we just have a looking after the very simple questions of the process costing and how we can actually move and how to solve the questions in the case of a simple process has been actually involved by the manufacturing company. In case of the another sessions, we were discussed that the part of a process costing where we have an abnormal wastages as well as a normal wastages and abnormal gains, or maybe along with that if they have some other part of a selling part of incomes included in the process accounts or a process costing, we were actually trying to resolve that questions in the another session. And in the last sessions we were discussed in case of a normal wastage percentage were missing, that means in the question if the certain items were not clearly defined in the questions or it is considered as a missing items, how you can find out that missing items and solve the questions regarding the particular topic. Now in this particular session today, I am going to deliver the part of a byproducts. This is also a part of a process costing concern where the byproducts and inter-process profit costing, these are the two topics which we want to discuss in this process costing in the coming sessions. Today I am taking a byproduct of the company in case of the company manufacturing a main product or a main process where along with the main product manufacturing, if the company is having some other part of a byproducts along with the main products, how the company is actually deal with that byproducts in case of the income is concerned and so far as the expenditures is concerned, if there are certain expenditures incurred in total or in general of the manufacturing company or a whole manufacturing company, how it can be distributed when the income realizations or an expenditures allocations between the manufacturing product as well as a main product and the byproducts, how you can define and how the allocation of an expenses and a portion of the expenses has been done required of the product. So this is the way which we will try to resolve these questions today regarding the byproduct in process costing. Shall review the questions first. That this is your question. Now here this is the questions where the company is actually manufacturing a main product X. So the Bombay Enterprise Company manufacturing a product X, along with the manufacturing of a product X, they have two byproducts which names Y and Z. So here the informations which we have available in this case, that the company is manufacturing a X product, but along with the X product they have two other byproducts also with the main manufacturing product which are Y and Z. Now the joint expenses of the production are as under. As I already mentioned, there are certain expenditures incurred as a whole, or maybe it is incurred for a whole company which may not be easily identified or divided or distributed between the all the products, maybe a product X as well as the product Y and product Z, which are raw material is actually incurred in total 10,000 rupees, wages is incurred 11,500 and other expenses are incurred 7,700. In total, the total joint expenditures are incurred for the particular company is 29,200 rupees. This is what they have a total expenditures. Now see the table. In the table they were actually clearly mentioned the expenditures are incurred separately. Separately in that means the whatever the expenditures are incurred for a manufacturing of a main product X, along with that the expenditures are incurred for another two products also, that is byproduct Y and Z, and it is mentioned separately for all the direct or other indirect expenses or maybe other overheads are also. See here, the first item is material. Material expenditures incurred for a product X is 2,500, but for byproducts Y and Z, which are very lesser than the main product, but natural, it's always lesser because of these are the byproducts. Main products expenditures are always higher than the byproducts, which are actually 1,200 and 1,400. Now see the wages. Wages may be differ because of main product manufacturing wages is actually 1900, but for manufacturing of a byproduct Y and Z it may be incurred more than that because of they need to process more to refine the byproducts, and that's why the Y and Z wages amount is actually 1600 and 2000 rupees. Especially Z wages is actually higher than the manufacturing of a main product also, but it happens because of the byproduct required certain processes to refine the product properly, which you can actually try to convert in a sellable values, and that's why the wages incurred higher than sometimes the main product also. Other expenditures are incurred 1500 rupees for a main product tax, and for byproduct it's 900 and 1050. Selling price are given. Main product selling price is 30,000 rupees, where the byproduct selling price is lesser than the main product, which may be suitable or feasible also because of the byproduct is actually manufactured along with the main product, so their selling price must be lower than this, and this is actually happened in this example also, which are 20,000 and 15,000 rupees. Now the important part of this question is last column of this tabulation format, that is estimated rates of a profit on sale. So what amount of profitability has been charged on a selling price, that percentage has been given here in this question. For X is 40%, for Y is 30%, and for Z is 25%. So these are the profitability percentage which was actually charged and on the selling price, and this percentage would be helpful for calculation of a distribution of a joint expenses which are given in the first part of the question, which are raw material, wages and other expenses, rupees total 29,200. And the last line is show how joint expenses of production can be allocated. So that means the main theme of this question is very clear, that the total amount of joint expenses has been distributed, which are actually 29,200, which are given in general in total of the whole manufacturing company, which are material, wages and other direct expenses. But how this 29,200 has been allocated between all the three different products, because of the company is actually manufacturing a product X only, but when they manufacture product X, along with this manufacturing of product X, they were actually getting two another products, that is Y and Z. Now the Y and Z's is also having a good amount of quantity and good amount of selling values also, and that's why the total amount of expenditures incurred in general for a manufacturing company, and that's why this needs to identify the right amount of profitability. We need to distributed or an allocated or an apportioned the total amount of joint expenses between all the three products. But for that we need to understand how the joint expenses can be allocated, on which basis the joint amount of expenses can be allocated. So this is what we try to understand in this particular session, and how this question can be solved. Now see the solution of these questions, and this actually would helpful to evaluate it in case of in your practical values also. Now see here, this is the solution statement showing the allocation of a joint expenses. This is a title of your table. It means that we are trying to resolve here how these questions can be solved it. Now see here, according to the values which we actually try to understand the selling price which we are actually taking first. See here, the selling price is actually going to take it from this question tabulation format on the fourth column, and that is selling price 30,000, 20,000 and 15,000. So that it's actually directly recorded, and it starts with this year. So selling price here, this is a selling price, and which are very clearly taken from the questions 30,000, 20,000 and 15,000 rupees. Total amount of selling price for all the three products, it comes to 65,000 rupees, right? Now here the selling price which we were actually already tried to understood according to the basis of the profitability percentage has been given in the question, and that is estimated rates of profit on sale for X is 40%. Now see here, X is 40%, so percentage, second column of the your solution is percentage of profit on sales, and which is for X is 40%. Now 40% of selling price percentage applied on the selling price 30,000, which comes to 12,000 rupees. 40% on 30,000, it comes to 12,000 rupees. So estimated profit on X is 12,000 rupees, which is actually clearly written in the third column, which would be deducted from the selling price, because of we need to find out the total cost. Why we need to find out the total cost? Because of the joint expenses will be distributed on the basis of the valuation of a total cost of individual product X, product Y and product Z. So that is why we need to identify and determine the first total cost. How you can determine the total cost? Very simple way. Because of the selling price is given, profitability percentage is given, so percentage of profit will be applied on selling price, deducted from the selling price, automatically the remaining price is the cost price. As we already discussed in many times in the past sessions also, the cost price is equal to S minus P. So selling price minus profit, you can actually identify the cost price. Now on the basis of this cost price, whatever the separate expenditures are given will be deducted from it, and then the remaining amount of the cost will be considered of a total proportion, and on that proportion the joint expenses will be distributed. Now see the answer again here. As we already find out, the 40% is applied on 30,000 and 12,000 is profit, minus for 30,000 the remaining amount is 18,000. So this is a cost price for X. As we already applied the same formula, that is the cost price is equal to S minus P, selling price minus profit. The same way we are trying to find out for Y also. What is the selling price for Y? That is 20,000. What was the percentage applied on the selling price of Y? That is 30%. So 30% on 20,000, which comes to 6,000 rupees, will be deducted from the selling price of Y. So the remaining amount, it comes 14,000. So this is a cost price of the product Y, which is a byproduct of the manufacturing of the whole company. So byproduct Y cost price is 14,000. Now moving to the next is Z. Now see, Z selling price is mentioned in the question, that is 15,000, and the 25% is actually a percentage of profit charged on selling price of Z. So 25% on 15,000, which comes to 3,750. Now 3,750 rupees, it is actually a profit of the respected product. So now this 3,750 profitability would be deducted from the selling price. We would get an idea that what would be the total cost after the deducted of the profit of a byproduct Z. Now this is another byproduct. As we already discussed in the question, company is actually focused to manufacture only product X, but along with the product X they have two byproducts also, product Y and product Z. Now their profitability percentage deducted from their selling price, we would get an idea that what would be the total cost of the individual byproduct, product Y and product Z. In this case, the product Z's total cost, it comes to 11,250. Now the total of all the total cost of individual X, Y and Z, which comes to 43,250. So 43,250 rupees is the total cost of all the three products. Now this is the first part of your solution. Now moving to the second part of the solution, and for that we need to see the question. Now see the question here. We have already clear-cut informations regarding the individual expenses of the respected product X, product Y and product Z. We don't have to do anything, we just have to write down all the separate expenses of each product in the respected table and make it a total of all these expenditures. Now see here in the question, we have three separate expenses: material, wages and other expenses. So these are the three total expenses, and these three expenses were actually given clearly a separate expenses of each product X, Y and Z. Now these three expenditures are going to record in this question. Now see the solution here: less expenses. After the total cost, less expenses, and we actually mentioned here material, wages and other expenses. So now here, see, I just wanted to tell you here all the total expenditures which are actually including the joint cost. Here we need to bifurcate the how much actually separate expenses were given in the question and what amount of remaining expenditures were there to allocated between the between the products, between product X, product Y and product Z. So that is why we just identified first from the table or first from the question how much separate expenditures for each product were clearly given. Now here material is given for product X is 2500, Y is 1200 and Z is 1400. If you want to confirm this from the question, you just see here the question in material also. X 2500, Y 1200 and Z is 1400. The same were actually written in the solution 2500, 1200 and 1400. Same way wages is also mentioned in this respected question 1900, 1600 and 2000 rupees. We need to make a total of expenditures of material also in the last column, as we prepared the last column is total column. So the total material cost of all the three products, it comes to 5100. Wages total of all the three products is 5500, and the third expenditures were given in this question, that is other expenses mentioned for X 1500, for Y is 900 and for Z is 1050. So this is the total amount of all the other expenditures, it comes to 3450. Now see here, we will try to make a total in a vertical as well as in horizontal. In a vertical you may be having a total of material expenditures, wages expenditures and other expenditures. When you are going to make a total of in a horizontal way, you will get a total of the expenditures which are incurred for a product X, product Y and product Z. If you are going to see the total expenditures for X is 5900 rupees. So this is an expense for product X. It is clearly mentioned in the question. 3700 rupees expenses for Y, material, wages and other expenses, and 4450 rupees expenditures incurred for product Z. Now see these are the expenses very clearly mentioned in the question, as we already seen in this particular part of question. See here in this question all these three expenditures were clearly mentioned. Now as we already have looking after the questions and mention the separate expenditures in the particular table, this is a second part of the solution. The first part of the solution, we try to identify the cost value, the total cost value, which are included the separate expenses as well as the joint expenses. Now we just need to identify the joint expenditures, maybe some part of expenditures incurred for product X, some part of expenditures may be incurred for their byproducts also for Y and Z, but how much, that we do not know. How it can be distributed, how it will be allocated, it will be allocated on the basis of a proportion. On which proportion? The proportion which are actually find out after the separate expenditures were deducted from the total cost, whatever the balance amount it's actually came, this balance amount proportion would be applied on the joint expenses. So that is why what we did, we find out the separate expenses from the question, directly recorded in the respected solution format and deducted from the particular values. Now after we find out the separate values, see the solution. The total cost A, which we already find out. Now total expenses B, that also we determined from the question, that is 5900 for X, 3700 for Y and 4450 rupees for Z, that is B. Now what we need to find out? We need to find out the contribution A minus B. Actually it is not a contribution, it is a difference value, it is actually a remaining values, it is not a contribution, it is a remaining values. Now remaining amount of a remaining cost, you can say it is a remaining cost. A minus B, total cost minus total expenses which are separately given in the question, and after A minus B, that means 18,000 minus 5,900, the remaining amount of cost of product X is 12,100 rupees. 12,100 rupees, it is a remaining cost value or a remaining expenses which are incurred jointly for the whole manufacturing company. Same way we try to find out for Y. The total expenditures is 14,000 or a total cost is 14,000 minus separate expenses for product Y is 10,300, sorry 3,700. So the remaining values of or a remaining amount of cost for product Y is 10,300 rupees. And as we already determined for the remaining two products, we will try to find out for Z also. The total cost for Z is 11,250. Now their separate expenses incurred which are clearly given in the question 4,450 deducted from the total cost, the values which we find out 6,800 rupees for product Z. Now this is the way to identify the remaining cost or remaining expenses. Now see the question here. Why we actually find out the remaining expenses? We find out the remaining expenses or a remaining cost because of they have a joint expenses of rupees 29,200. This expense is actually incurred for a manufacturing company in general, in total. Now these expenditures will distributed between all these three products X, Y and Z, right? Now because of this distribution, because of this allocation and apportion, we did this way. And that is why we find out the contribution, or you can say the remaining expenses or remaining cost. Now what next? This is the final part of the solution. After we find out the remaining expenses or remaining values, this is a remaining values or remaining expenses or remaining cost. We find out the proportion of these expenses. How we can find out the proportion of these expenses? We just try to remove the common zeros. So that is why the proportion of X is 1 to 1, 2 zeros removed, 103 and the 68. So now in this way the proportion of the remaining expenses of all the three products 1 to 1, 103 and 68, and the total proportion it comes to 292. This is your total proportion. Now here in this way the total proportion 292 will be applied on the joint expenses. Now see the question once again. How much total amount of expenses is given here jointly? That is 29,200. See here, 29,200 rupees, it's a total joint expenses incurred for the whole manufacturing company. And what is the proportion of these remaining expenses of all the three products? That is also 292. Now we don't have to do anything else. We have to just apply this proportion on the total amount of expenses 29,200. But instead of that, we try to find out the separate distribution. So what we did one by one. See the question. First expense jointly incurred, that is material. How much it is incurred? 10,000 rupees. Now here, see here in this question, the material actually distributed 10,000 rupees in the proportion of this. How it would be distributed? It would be distributed in this proportion. Now see here how it will be distributed: 1 to 1, 103 and 68. So now 10,000 multiplied by 121 divided by 292, it comes to 4,144. So this is your expenses, material expenses incurred for a product X. Now in this way we identified the material expenditures of product X. Because of 10,000 rupees a total material cost is actually determined, and this 10,000 rupees expenditures incurred in the way of a general distribution in the format of a proportion. The proportion is very clear, that is 1 to 1, 103 and 68. The total amount of proportion is 292. So what we did, we just tried to distribute the expenditures incurred jointly in the proportion of the joint expenditures values, and that proportion is actually determined of values of individual expenses of product X and byproduct Y and Z for material, for wages and for other expenses. Then what we did, after we distributed the joint expenses as per the proportion, in the third part of the solution we just make a total of the separate expenses distributed on the basis of proportion, which would be the remain same amount was actually find out the balance amount of cost or balance value of cost, and this amount would be the exact amount which was given in the first part of the question, the total joint expenses incurred for the manufacturing company. If it is same, if it is 12, that means we just have to very much cure that our answer is whatever the calculations made by us, that is right. Now see the solution once again, so at least we can identify here. Now see here, 4,144, 3,527 and 2,329 distribution of X, Y and Z of a material. The same way we distributed for wages and same way we distributed for other expenses also. Now after the distribution of these expenses, now see the question, how much it's actually other expenses, how much is total joint expenses? 29,200. Now see the solution, the 29,200 rupees, it's a distribution, a portion of a joint expenses. This is your third part of the calculation, where material, wages and other expenses distributed between the particular part. and these expenses were distributed in the proportion of this. That was a remaining amount of expenses in this case calculation, and at last we just identified the total column 10,000 rupees, 11,500 and 7,500 rupees, which are actually tallied with this question 10,000, 11,500 and 7,500, making a total of 29,200. So, this is the way. Actual answer is this, the third part of the separate distribution of the expenses between X, Y and Z, which are distributed 414, 3527, 2329 and for wages 4765 and elsewhere. So, these are the way to identify and distribution of an allocation of a joint cost. In this way, I just want to explain the total amount of joint expenses distributed between the particular products, main product as well as the byproduct, in the allocation or in the proportion of the expenses which are incurred in the business in general or a separate. Then the basis of formula we applied, that is cost is equal to S minus V. After we find out the total cost, deducted the separate cost from the total cost, the remaining amount of expenditures would be distributed between the products or between the main products as well as the byproduct in the same proportion, which we would actually get an idea. This is what I want to explain and tell you regarding the solution of a byproduct question. This is from my side today. Thank you. Namaskar.
स्वाध्याय टीवी